Hey gang, Sean here for VFX Jams. In this episode, we're going to continue on with our film damage series. This particular episode, we're going to create film leaks. Now, a film leak typically occurs when, for one of two reasons. Either it's done on purpose, which is called film flashing, and that is done in a controlled way where the unexposed film is exposed briefly to a light source, and what that does is that washes out the exposure, so when the negative goes through the bath, the development bath, the image is going to be ever so slightly or significantly washed out. The second thing that causes a film flash is accidental, and that's when the film canister is accidentally exposed to light unevenly, and that usually creates a more pronounced bleeding, if you want to call it that, or flashing on one side of the film, usually the side facing the opening of the canister that holds the film. So we're going to create that effect on a piece of footage, and here we go. All right, let's start with our footage like we have been. I'm going to use our Santa Monica footage we've been using for the film damage series. And we're going to drag it to our timeline like we do to create a composition. And we're going to apply it on an adjustment layer like we've been doing. We're going to call it Film Flash. And now we are going to jump into a series of effects that when they're all combined, they will actually help us create this illusion that the negative has been exposed to light. Let's begin first. We want to take this layer that we've just created, this adjustment layer, and we want to change the blending mode. So we need to, it's not open on my timeline here, so we're going to want to right mouse click on, really you can right mouse click anywhere along this area, go into columns, and then it's modes. So we'll turn modes on or just reveal it. And we're going to want to create or turn this from normal to add. So now our layer will behave in this blending fashion. So the first thing we want to add to this layer is Turbulent Noise, our friend Turbulent Noise, which is under Noise and Grain, bottom one. And that'll do what it does here. And because we're adding it, here, let me turn this off so you can see what it looks like without it. That's what it looks like when it's not being added. When we add it, it's actually dropping out everything that's dark up to 50% and adding, mathematically, everything that's above 50% to the image, which actually increases the result is it increases the overall lightness or brightness of the image. So that's the non-scientific, non-mathematical version of what it's doing. So, all right, so contrast, we're going to leave these two things alone. Contrast, we're going to crank way up. So 1242, 1242 on the contrast. So it'll create this kind of crazy, hard edged pattern. Brightness, we're going to take down to -131. And now we want to change our transform. We want to scale this, and we want to scale it up quite a bit. So that scale is under transform. We want to scale it up to 850%. So it's going to create large artifacts here, large artifacts of noise. And in our complexity, we want to take that down a little bit, take it down to 4. And that will make the shape's a little more generic looking with a little less detail. And let's see, we want to change our turbulence factor to, where's our turbulence factor? My fault. Turbulence factor stays what the default is, which is 1.5. And the random seed we want to create an expression for, and the way that we're going to do that, and briefly, if you're not familiar with an expression is just a little piece of code you can introduce into your comp that will tell After Effects to do something without you actually having to keyframe it. So in order to do that, if you're on a Mac, hold down the Option key, and we want to apply this expression to the random seed. So Option key and then click. And you'll get this dialog box down here in your timeline. And we want to change this, or we want to add the expression time times, which is the asterisk key, 24. Now, if you have not done some of the other tutorials in this film damage series, briefly, 24 represents a new seed for every single frame, which means every frame will be unique. So this pattern will change for every single frame. Now, again, if your footage is 30 frames per second, this will be 30. And if you shot at 60 frames a second, 60, and so forth. So hit enter to accept that value. And now if we play that back, we should see, there we go, yeah, this random effect. Unique for every frame. Okay, let's turn the audio off on that. And so that's where we're at so far. Okay. So now we've generated some basic shapes that we can now manipulate. Okay, so we've done that. Next thing we need to do is we need to add a tritone effect. Now, the tritone, I'm not remembering where it is, so I'm going to go over to our effects presets and just type in tritone. Tritone will give you the ability to colorize things based on highlights, midtones, and shadows. Now, a film burn actually has a color bias, so it's burning through red, green, and blue layers of dye. So you'll see those burn out as specific colors. So you can play around with this, and you can also customize this. I went with these colors. For highlight, I chose to enter, I'll just enter the RGB values here. 255, this green was 242, 242, and blue was 154. So it's a yellow. Midtone, I went with 203 in the red, and green was 86, and blue was 25. So you actually get a sense of that warm burnout look, and shadows remains black. So, all right, so that takes care of our tritone. So I'm going to turn that little thing up just to save us space and help us concentrate on our next effect, which will be fast blur. Fast blur is in blur and sharpen. There it is. And we're going to crank this up. We're going to turn this all the way up to 650. And now it's looks like it's pretty much disappeared. We want to actually just blur it on the vertical dimension. So there you go. So then you see a streak there. And we want to do repeat edge pixels so we make sure that that effect is extends to the edge of the canvas. So that's it for fast blur. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a mask. Now, a mask, if you've not done a mask before, a mask is basically a way to isolate areas of a particular layer using a path tool or a mask tool. Sometimes you hear it called a roto spline, roto. It's all the same thing. And you access that in After Effects up here. There's actually many ways to access it in After Effects, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll just do it this way. So make sure your layer is selected, and then go up here to this rectangle tool. And now we want to do an offset here. We want to select like this. And as you can see, we're not going all the way over the entire edge over here on this side of our canvas. And there's a method to this madness, which hopefully will show up. It'll reveal itself here shortly. Now, that mask tool, or that mask, is right here. It'll show up under masks, under your layer. And we want to adjust some of the attributes to this. So you can access this by turning down the little caret there, the little triangle. I'll turn this effects up to help us focus. And you can access it here. If you want to get there quickly, the quick key for that is, if this triangle is turned up, is M. And if you hit it twice, it'll show all of your values here, all your variables, your attributes. So we want to increase the feather of this. Now what that does, that basically, right now you have a hard edge. And if you look at the mask tool here, you'll see it cuts it off as a hard edge. And I'm just going to hide it real quick so you can see what it's doing. See how it's a hard edge there? Now, I'm going to undo that. We want to soften that edge. So we're going to crank up that mask feather quite a bit. So it's blending a little bit there. And we're going to change the mask expansion to -75. What that means is basically, if this is 0, -75 eats into the mask, and if you add, if it's a positive number, it will actually extend the mask. So now keep in mind, as with really any kind of look that you develop in After Effects, It's not necessarily an exacting process. A lot of times it's research and development is, many times it's intentional, many times it's accidental. A lot of times it's a little bit of both. So what you're seeing here, you can accomplish what I'm doing in a number of different ways. This is just the way that I discovered how to do it. So if these tools work for you, rock them. And if you think that you have a better way to go about doing this or something that makes sense for you, then absolutely try it. So, all right, so that's rotoscoping, and that's all we need to do there. So now we want to affect the edges of this mask tool. Now we can do that with a plugin called Roughen Edges. And Roughen Edges is, I believe it's under Stylize. I don't remember where anything is. There it is. It's Stylize Roughen Edges. Now, Roughen Edges will actually take your alpha channel, and in this case, we've created an alpha channel or a mat with this mask tool. And there's actually quite a bit of information here. I won't go into all of it. If you're interested and you want to know more, hit me up or comment below this video, and I can do other tutorials that go specifically into this. This is a little more rudimentary After Effects stuff and just general compositing. But if you don't know and you'd like to know, let me know and we'll do something about that. So just briefly, so you can see what it's doing. I'm going to isolate. I'm just going to call I'm going to do what's called soloing a channel, and that means we're just going to look at this layer or solo this layer. So I'm going to show you what the alpha channel looks like. So you have red, green. If you can see the borders here, red, green, blue, and then the last one is alpha. And if you turn off this the adjustment layer value, you'll actually see what it's doing. Now, this is our mask that's being feathered that is then being treated with this Roughen Edges plugin. Now, once you become used to this methodology, this is incredibly powerful. You can do all kinds of very organic looking things with this technique. So, and I'll show you, if you lower your feather down to 0, you won't see it nearly as much. And the more you crank up your feathering, the more you see this effect take place. So let's go ahead and dial in some numbers on Roughen Edges, and we'll see what it does. So border, we want to take down to 0. Edge sharpness, we want to make 0. And see what that did? That basically softened the whole image, essentially, and allowed that Roughen Edges to really bleed through the entire image here. And the fractal influence, we want to leave at 1. Scale, we're going to crank way up. So that goes up to 580. So that just increases, kind of just makes the whole image, or the cloud part of the image, much larger in scale. And complexity stays at 2. And now we want to create a unique version of this pattern for every frame. So we're going to do that in the same way that we did the previous Turbulent Noise, and we're going to do that through Evolution Options, Random Seed here, and our expression trick. So Option, Random Seed, and now it'll give us the little dialog box down here, or the little place to enter your expression. And we're going to use the same expression, which was time times, which is the asterisk, 24, and or 30 or 60, depending on the frame rate of your footage. And there we should have, and I'll play it back so we can see, we should have this look. There we go. Okay. So now, if you've been following me exactly, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit and turn some of these things off. So first thing we'll do is let's make sure that the adjustment layer is turned back on. Right now it's reading this layer as a solid. We want it to be read as an adjustment layer. So right here into that little sort of yin and yang shape, or that black and white shape, make sure that's clicked back on. I'm going to click back over to, so we're seeing all the red, green, and blue channels at the same time. And I'm going to unsolo this layer so we can see underneath it. So there we go. Okay, once we're done with the Roughen Edges plugin, the next thing we want to do is our mask that we've created here, we want to invert that. So basically, right now it's selecting everything inside the mask. We want to invert it so it's selecting everything outside of the mask. And so we're just going to click under Mask. We're going to click Inverted, like that. And now what that does is that essentially pushes the this color, this pattern we've created, it pushes it to the edge right here. Now what we're pretending like is that the film, if you can picture this was actually on a film strip, Now that film strip would be really long. It's like feet of film, and it's wound up into a spool, and it's put in a canister. So if that top of the canister was taken off, it would expose one edge more than the other edge. So it makes sense that this edge would be more blown out than this edge. This edge being away from the light, this edge being towards the light at the top of the lid of the canister. So that's why we inverted it, and we want to emphasize this. Now, one of the things we also did is, in creating this rough and edges thing, we actually made this matte inconsistent. So what we'll have is we'll have that light leaks, those light leaks showing up through here. It'll be just much less emphasized than it will be on the edge here. Now, the one last thing we want to do is we want to increase this value. We want to really crank this up. So easily, quick way to do that is we're just going to apply levels, and we're going to go to color correction, levels. And now we want to apply that to the RGB here. And so we can just crank this way up. And this can really, you adjust this to how much you want your footage, you know, the light leak on your footage to be apparent. So let's play this back and just kind of see what we have. And so that is pretty much how to create your own light leak. Now, you can adjust the amount of the light leak. You can adjust the number of leaks that you have by messing with your turbulent noise, by taking that down. You would take down the brightness, so you'd have a lot fewer of those passes going through. You can change the scale of them, and so forth. So you can really dial this into taste so it makes sense for whatever the creative look that you're going for is. So that's it. That's how you do this. That's how you create fake light leaks. And I'm going to crank this up. We'll play it back a little bit, and we'll turn this off just to make it a little prettier. We'll play it full screen and see what we have. So that's it. Light leaks for your film damage look. Again, hopefully you've enjoyed this this tutorial, and if you have, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll continue to bring more cool tutorials your way, and thanks for watching.